Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being in class with us today. And also thank you for, being a detractor. Why? Well, because without you, we wouldn't have the constant reminder of how rude, inconsiderate, illiterate, pompous, minuscule, tactless, overbearing, demanding, self-centered, egotistical, and stupid, how stupid people could be. So I want to thank you, detractors, for your comments and what you've got to say about those of us who are trying to restore America to its former greatness. For those of us, for those who try so hard to expose the criminality and right the wrongs, the detractors are showing exactly who our enemies really are. And we appreciate that. We really do. While we're trying to connect with Dr. Richard Allen Miller, I'd like to just mention a few things. Septic systems. This is one of the things that I'm writing about in the book. And here's something that happens with septic systems. So let's say you have, you send some liquid down the drain, and you have your own septic system. And it's a big box, and the solids collect in the septic tank, and then the liquids continue on to leach into what's called a leach field. That's where the liquids go, the clear type liquids, and the sun will evaporate them from the soil. So the water will dissipate, and that way you won't have a soggy yard. Well, unless it's raining. And if you have a lot of rain and the ground becomes really soggy, your septic system can back up because there's no place for that liquid to go. Have you thought about that? So when you're planning your septic system, make sure you have plenty of laterals. And a lateral would be a piece of 4-inch pipe with holes drilled in it. What happens is the liquids from the septic tank, the clear liquids, will go into the laterals, and the laterals are resting in a bed of crushed stone. And on top of the crushed stone are these 4-inch pipes with like 1/2-inch holes, let's say every foot or so. And the liquids just drip through these holes, and they continue through the length of the pipe until the water dissipates. And if those laterals aren't long enough, well, your septic system will back up. If the laterals are too long, you've wasted money in building a leach field that's larger than necessary. And that's one thing to think about. Another thing to think about is where you put the leach field. You really want it to be in the sun, so that the sun can bake off that moisture that is coming from your faucets and toilets and all that. Just a thought. And how about savings accounts? That's another thing that I'm going to write about. Back in the 1960s, my dad said, "Hey, Ben, let's go to the bank and we'll open a savings account for you." Back then, savings accounts were paying about 5% interest. And so we went to the bank, and I got one of these passbooks, and he put a deposit of $5 in it. And he said, "Okay, here's the manager of the bank." His name was Harry at the time. And I met Harry, and Harry took care of processing and typing up the passbook. And I now had a deposit of $5 in my savings account. And my dad said, this is money that you're going to be saving for the future. And he put in the first deposit for me, and the rest was up to me. And as I cut lawns as a youngster in the neighborhood, I would put my money into the savings account, and it grew and grew and grew. And it grew to the point where when I wanted to buy my very first car, which happened to be a 1950 Ford Jeep with a snowplow for $675, I was able to afford it. And so that's what savings habits can allow you to do. But today it's a little different because now you wonder, will you be able to get your money out of the bank should the bank collapse? So there's a lot of ways to look at it, but saving is important. That's saving for the future. And that's the kind of thing that's the common thread in much of our lives here at the farm. We resist temptation, the greed of now, in favor of saving for the future. We try to save for the future and plan for those very lean times. And we surely do have them. And those lean times seem to be hitting farmers because of weather. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning.
Morning, Rick. So what I've been talking about...
Turn your volume up. This telephone and landline is terrible, and something is amiss because my Skype works fine. Why can't we get on with Skype? What's going on today that's different than yesterday?
I don't know, Rick. I'm not there. I really don't know.
I do. For example, yesterday in the evening from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock, I received 12 unsolicited recording calls. 12 of them. In my entire life, I have never had that many calls in one evening that were recordings. Now that sounds like harassment, and that's FCC, I believe. And I believe I'm going to start lodging complaints against CenturyLink and the rest of them, because what's happening today and the quality of my service has become so poor as to be essentially inaccessible usage. Again, I'm not on Skype with you right now, and we've never had a problem. Never. Now, that's Microsoft, and that's CenturyLink, which is the carrier, and that's what's happening. What do we got, an EMP strike? I don't think so.
It sounds like you're...
Today, why this moment?
It sounds like you're very frustrated, and I am as well.
Frustrated? I'm ready to walk away from everything.
Well, Rick, I have. I have gone Galt, as in John Galt. I am not feeding the beast. I am resisting every way I can, short of
but
being...
I don't want to become angry like you are. I don't want to be that way.
Well, I don't either.
No, come on, man. You know what I'm talking about.
I wasn't raised that way.
This is done with intent. I discovered something. I have a lawyer, by the way, flying all the way from Atlanta, coming in this weekend as a class action suit lawyer. Stay tuned on how this plays. I'll tell you what I do know. Gang Stalking Protocol Corporation out of Kirkland, Washington, that was developed to take drug dealers off the streets of New York, has merged with Amazon corporate level. There is a one level below the corporate offices in Amazon building. This big building with all the Amazon, all the different floors and everything. And, there is no accountability anymore for criminals like this and what they're doing to people like me. And there's nothing I can do about it except I'm going public. And I am outraged. And I don't want to be like that. I want to be Mr. Wizard, Well, Johnny, it works like this. I can tell you, I don't have a clue how it works anymore. Why? Because they've changed the rules.
I'm in total agreement with you, Rick. Our phone service is lousy.
Do you understand how bad that is? I can't even understand what you're saying on my side of the telephone. How does that work?
All right. Let's see if Jason can crank it up just a little bit more. But
it's not even volume. It's distorted. It's craziness. It makes me, not really want to do radio. It's like taking all the joy.
Yeah, I agree. We have CenturyLink here as well. It used to be a wonderful company, let's say 14 years ago. I remember calling them up and saying, wow, you guys have really are world class. You keep the system up and running. Your employees must go through a test in order to find the best of the best of the best because you're right on top of your game. And then they merged with Embark Communications, and it became, it changed from CenturyLink, which was great, to CenturyTel to CenturyLink. CenturyLink is miserable. Absolutely miserable. They've got wonderful, smiling, happy people in the Philippines doing their customer service. However, they're not authorized to do anything other than to say, I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that. I'm sorry for that. They're authorized to do that, but they're not authorized to fix it. And they can't fix it because they're an ocean away. Now, you're absolutely right. CenturyLink is miserable. Absolutely miserable. And it has one of the worst, if not the worst, customer service rankings of any company.
I can't even send you a smoke signal.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, Rick, let's talk about something that's happened to the internet. The internet used to be pretty darn fast, even with modems, because we weren't moving these large volumes of data. But Netflix and Amazon Prime are streaming video over the internet, and it is clogging up the internet. Then you add to that, we have Google and Amazon using home data to monitor you, even when you go to sleep. So these companies are requiring that appliance manufacturers. Now, it used to be appliance manufacturers were big companies, right? Now, the big companies are these electronic companies that manipulate data, like Google and Amazon and Verizon and companies like that, AT&T. Well, they are requiring that the appliance manufacturers keep their appliances up 24/7 so that Google and Amazon can more tightly control the data that they get and how it's used to monitor us. We'll be right back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, and we're talking about how our infrastructure is failing. And what's happening is Google and Amazon and others are trying to collect more and more data about us. At the same time, companies are advertising every which way with pop-ups and videos. So you go to a website and you start hearing sounds and music and people talking, and all you want to do is read. But nope, you can't do that. The video starts playing, and all that is clogging up the internet, and we hate it. And so what happens is the first thing that when I go to a website, these videos pop up, and I'm looking for the X, and sometimes it's in the upper right-hand corner. Sometimes they try to trick us, and they move it to the upper left-hand corner or the lower left-hand corner or the lower right-hand corner, or the X is hidden with a white-on-white background, and you can't find it. And that nonsense is clogging up the internet and making people angry. Okay? And then, for example, here's another thing that's happening. So I mentioned yesterday that USA Prepares on the Ron Gibson channel, by the way, thank you, Ron Gibson, for doing this, is considered advertiser not friendly. So we're not friendly because we talk about problems and we talk about conspiracy, fact, and we talk about chemtrails and we talk about, things like that, things that are important. Well, YouTube thinks that we're advertiser unfriendly because we should be talking about who has the best soda and who has the best ice cream and where's the best theme park to go to, to waste our money. So because of us not talking about those things, we are considered advertiser unfriendly. At the same time, YouTube feels that it's necessary to get more revenue from the clicks at USA Prepares on the Ron Gibson channel by filling it with 12 commercials per broadcast. 12. Not one, 12. So that tells me that people are listening. Otherwise, they wouldn't fill our broadcast with so many commercials. So what's happening is we're being tracked, we're being monitored, our internet is being clogged up with advertisements. And really, here's what I do. When I see these companies, I try to make a quick mental note while I'm clicking X to stop these idiotic commercials and advertisements. I try to block them out, and yet I try to remember at the same time who they are, so I absolutely, positively do not patronize the company that is producing all of these advertisements that are in my way. All they want to do is sell, 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 things that I'm not interested in. And I despise it. So, Rick, when I was born, I wasn't born angry. I really wasn't. I have learned this behavior. I've learned to fight back.
You know, the first thing that happened to me when I was born is that they hit me and then took me off to be fingerprinted before I could even meet my mother.
Yeah, that's what they do.
Oh, yeah. Did I mention they chopped my penis off also, circumcision? What do you think that did to my attitude?
Well, I'll tell you, I asked a doctor about that, and I asked a nurse, and they said, oh, you won't remember that. He doesn't remember that. While the child is screaming, right? He won't remember that.
Yeah, it's a wrong concept. And if you want proof it's wrong, look at the way a dog loves differently than a human being because of the way they are whelped into this universe. Different.
Yeah.
And that's called spiritual midwifery. And I have to tell you that everything is wrong in terms of medicine, law enforcement. It's crazy out there. And everything, as far as I can tell, is broken because of greed. Primarily is the first demon. It's greed. There it is. Before anything else, it's greed. Not even about money. Power, greed for power. I don't know. I'm ready to pull the plug.
Hey, Rick, you've heard the name David Pecker? David Pecker runs AMI, American Media Incorporated, which is the company, the National Enquirer. He heads that company, and they got information about Bezos. We'll talk a little bit about that in just a minute when we come back. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, richardallenmiller.com. So, Rick, David Pecker is the guy who runs American Media Incorporated. And that company owns the National Enquirer, which exposed Jeff Bezos, the world's richest man's sexting of his private parts. So that went worldwide. So that's instant karma, and I love it. And I'm so glad that this happened because now the richest guy in the world can't prevent and stop what has happened. He's actually getting a taste of his own medicine. So what he thought he was sending his girl, what he thought was a private sex image, and it turned out that it's not private, and it was captured, and it was reported, and now he is facing the instant karma of his own actions. Okay? So what happens? Now, we've got Amazon, which has this device that listens all the time. Listens, Alexa and Echo listen all the time to what you're doing. And Amazon and Google are requiring that the manufacturers who make products that communicate with their listening device, their spy device that you can say, turn on the lights, turn off the lights, turn on the TV, things like real important things like that. Turn up the thermostat, things that are just too difficult for people to handle today. They have these listening devices, and they are communicating with the internet, sending that information, which is being recorded and stored, and we have no idea for how long. So now these large companies like Amazon and Google know when you go to sleep, when you turn your dishwasher on, what cycles you use, what's in your refrigerator, where you walk with your smart Nike sneakers, where you run, how fast you move, what your circulation is like, what your heart rate is like. They know. It's amazing. And then you combine that with bank data and your credit card information. This is like the dumbest thing I could imagine. I mean, as a matter of fact, I never did imagine it. And I couldn't believe it back in the 1980s, in the mid-1980s, when we were tracking customers' purchases. I mean, you could let me give you an example. When I worked at the bank, I shopped at a store called the Boyd store, B-O-Y-D. It's also known as Boyd's of Philadelphia. And they had suits and clothing for basketball players. I mean, really tall guys. And they had clothes for skinny guys like me. And so they had name brands, and they had tailors, and they had a salesperson that was your salesperson. It was really neat. You walk in, and your salesperson would say, "Hey, Vinny, how's it going? Hey, let me show you I know what would be great for you. This would match your black suit, your dark blue suit. Here, this will be perfect for you." They knew who you were, where you lived, what you did, and what clothing you had. They even said, you've got the yellow tie, the blue tie, the green tie. This mauve tie will be perfect. And it's a different color for you. And they would know that. Well, okay, so you go and you buy your suit and you charge it on your credit card, your MasterCard or Visa. And that's just what happened. Well, when I worked at the bank, I saw bank employees looking through bank credit card transactions of famous people, where they shopped and what they bought. Wow, look at this basketball player. Wow, he spent $5,000 on a suit. Wow. So these are nosy people looking into your records. I was there. I know it happened. So, and that's in the mid-1980s. We've had a lot of progress in spying technology since then. So if you think that your information is not being viewed by people, you're confused. Rick, do you have any comments about what I just said?
Right now, I'm trying to talk with your studio guy, trying to hook me up with Skype, because I hate telephones, and it says I can start. You're in Burnsville, Minnesota.
Yeah, GCN is in Burnsville, Minnesota.
Okay,
That's correct.
He's trying to call me right now. What is it? 7:34 was the last time he tried to call. It says call, but I don't hear it ringing at my end. And there's no phone, the green phone that you press to connect, like lifts up the receiver.
Right.
I don't believe any of it anymore. I think that everyone is lying to us about what is the real truth about what's happening, whether it's our bank account, our privacy, or our future. And when I say that, I can't believe anything anymore. Even my banker. My banker is my friend. She's been in my home for dinner. I've known her for more than 20 years, and she runs a tight ship, and yet she can't say to me certain things that they're about to do to us.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And let's say you had a mortgage note, and your friend, the banker, was the person who could stop your home from being repossessed. Would they do it? No.
I remember one time when my little girl was dying of leukemia, and my banker gave me a loan he knew I couldn't repay. What has happened to those days of friendship and caring about another human being?
They're gone. They're gone because of what I would say is the accumulation of individual greed.
And
the collective,
you
sum.
have a neighbor that has been next to you for more than 5 years, and you don't know his name.
Well, that would be in the city. That would be in the suburbs.
Moving away from the farm, and that's why we're now, as a country, in trouble, because it was our rural farm community that held this country together.
Last night,
that's something I want everybody to remember. It wasn't the city and the high tech and jobs available. It was the farmer. And the farmer was the one that held our country together with principles and religion. And today, that's being attacked from all sides. And our farm communities are falling apart to agribusiness. And I don't know what to say, except that I wished that I could get out from under rentals, that I could own my own property, that I could somehow have some degree of say on what happens to me. And I have absolutely no rights in that regard. And as a renter, it's terrible. It's terrible. And I can see it happening in medicine. I'm watching law enforcement. Let me give you an example on law enforcement. 20 years ago, our newspaper would post when the state police were going to set up a speed trap on the freeway. They would let everybody know locally when they were going to do the speed traps. Today, the sheriff in his brand new vehicle with a gun turret. Our cars have gun turrets. Our police cars. Why?
Okay, so the cops.
That's Ku Klux Klan. That is our. I'm watching the level of bullying where I want to go up and place a citizen's arrest on a policeman for his behavior, thinking he's got more rights than I do. I'm seeing it clearly. I'm watching how the very small, the kinds of people, there are many, many people in law enforcement trying to do the right thing, and it's like an overwhelming wave. There's no way they're going to be allowed to do it right. And it's just, I'm watching it, individually, like me, when I came out of grad school, I was a young, bright-eyed physicist wanting to change the world. And what did they do? They contaminated me by having me make weapons. I remember graduate school and making an infrared to visible light scanner, physically making a prototype for someone in Vietnam to test out. I remember doing it. And everything in technology, for example, like me in technology, is used first as a weapon before any other thing it's done. I don't know what to say, except that I'm embarrassed to call myself an American. I feel ugly, just like in the 70s, the ugly American. I feel embarrassed to be a human being. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to act like that. I'm 75 years old, and it's time for me to try to walk in the path that I believe is correct morally and ethically. And, I'm not going to confront these police, but they need to be confronted.
Okay, I agree with that. And there's an application for smartphones. I don't have it because I don't have a smartphone, but it's called Waze. And it will tell you where the cops are. People will update where the police have set up.
With headlights. When you had your headlights on and you'd flash it, that meant there was a speed trap where you just came from. That's the old.
Well, I still do it.
Thing.
I still do it. I mean, I flash for a couple miles to let people know that there's a plague ahead, and they need to keep that in mind.
My girlfriend was driving home one night. It was snowing, and she's extremely careful driving. She's like, from L.A. and has a whole different kind of mindset in how she behaves in an automobile. And she's driving 45 in a 45, and here is this state trooper, dark, didn't know, she thought it was a car pulled off the side of the road, and she's just driving home, and out he comes at her, comes out behind her, right up on her.
Hold that thought. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Rick, you were talking about your girlfriend driving, and
I'll pick it up.
Please tell us the story.
What happened was she was dead on the speed limit. He came out of darkness, got right on her tail illegally, by the way, in terms of length of cars, and she turned into a left lane to make a turn off to her street, and he turned and then went the other direction off the freeway while she went on home. Now, if that had been somebody at 50 miles an hour at 45, would he have pulled her over? They're bullies now. And the police cars in Oregon now have lights on them that hurt your eyes. You can't look at them. I'm talking about even at a long distance away. You can see them almost a mile away, and it hurts your eyes because of the bandwidth frequency that they're using for the blue on the red. The blue light, by the way, that they use in LEDs is toxic to your eyes. And the state of Oregon has chosen to choose a deeper, more intense light as a form of intimidation.
Mm-hmm. We do the same thing here in Missouri. Same thing.
Why they feel they need to do this. It used to be on the car, serve and protect, not intimidate and threaten.
Kill. Intimidate and kill. All right, Rick, so here's an article from Police One. Now, this same article is available all over the Internet. It just happens to be from a website called Police One, February 7th, 2019. New York Police Department demands Google stop revealing checkpoints on Waze, W-A-Z-E. The department is warning Waze app users who reveal DWI locations may face criminal charges. The New York Police Department has a message for Google. Stop helping drunks drive with impunity. The police department is demanding that the multinational tech giant stop posting DWI checkpoint locations on Waze, a popular GPS phone app, and is warning that the app users who reveal those locations might face criminal charges. The department fired off a cease and desist letter to Google over the weekend, demanding it immediately remove this function from the Waze application and change all of its apps, including Google Maps, to prevent users from posting similar data. In January, Google Maps added speed limits and speed trap locations to its phone app. Individuals who post the locations of DWI checkpoints may be engaging in criminal conduct, since the actions could be intentional attempts to prevent and or impair the administration of DWI laws and other relevant criminal traffic laws, warned Ann Prunty, the New York Police Department's acting deputy commissioner of legal matters. She added, the posting of such information for public consumption is irresponsible, since it only serves to aid impaired and intoxicated drivers to evade checkpoints and encourage reckless driving. That's nonsense. This person is a bozo. Okay. So what happened is people are pointing out these checkpoints because they're extremely dangerous. When these cops pull people over, they have a heightened sense of the need to beat people up. And so if you have a gun in your car, you're likely to get shot. If you have a knife on your person, you're likely to get shot. If you say, why are you doing this? They're likely to drag you out of the car and pummel you. If you don't believe me, just go to Google
or better
and
yet,
do a search on YouTube.
Police and see what they do. You know, that's why I think there's a need for a lawyers guild to protect us with our own might fight back system.
How about a citizen review board for all of the police actions?
I don't even want to go maritime law and try to hassle them with flags in the courtroom. I want to do it straight up with public scrutiny.
Yeah. Well, I've got a website. It's the perfect one. It's called crapton.com. Crapton.com. We should probably post cops' pictures, these bad cops, on crapton.com. We'll be right back after top of the hour news and commercial announcements. Everyone all set? Cocked? Locked? Hour number 2 of USA Prepares. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. We're talking about the cops and how sneaky these people are. Well, U.S. News site, NBCnews.com, says, headline, undercover cops break Facebook rules to track protesters and ensnare criminals. Facebook is teeming with fake accounts created by undercover law enforcement officers. They're against the rules, but cops keep making them anyway. I think they mean breaking them. Okay. It says in the summer of 2015, Memphis exploded with protests over the police killing of a 19-year-old man. Activists began hearing on Facebook from someone called Bob Smith. The name was generic, and so was his profile, a Guy Fawkes mask, a symbol of anti-government dissent. Smith acted as if he supported the protesters and slowly let him into their online community. Over the next 3 years, dozens of them accepted his friend request, allowing him to observe private discussions over marches, rallies, and demonstrations. In public postings and in private messages, he described himself as a far-left Democrat, a fellow protester, and a man of color. But Bob Smith was not real. He was the creation of a white, let me say that a different way, a white detective in the Memphis Police Department's Office of Homeland Security, whose job was to keep tabs on local activists across the spectrum from Black Lives Matter to Confederate sympathizers. The detective, Tim Reynolds, outed himself in August under questioning by the American Civil Liberties Union of Tennessee, which sued the police department for allegedly violating a 1978 agreement that prohibited police from conducting surveillance of lawful protests. The revelation validated many activists' distrust of local authorities. It also provided a rare look into the ways American law enforcement operates online, taking advantage of loosely regulated social media landscape and citizens casually relinquishing their privacy. So the cops around the country do this. They use Facebook to watch your movements. They lie. They cheat. They steal to get more notches on their arrest belts. Dump Facebook, class. Dump Facebook. Get off Google as much as you can. Seriously. I've dumped Facebook. I'm not suggesting you do anything that I haven't done. Why would you let these perverts monitor you? One of the principal reasons that I moved from the corrupt state of Virginia is because of the overbearing, overreach, in-your-face, threatening blue plague. I don't want anything to do with them. I told our county sheriff personally, I told him one-on-one on the phone, do not trespass. Do not come on my farm. You are not welcome here. Why do I want the cops here? Those guys bring guns and shoot with impunity. Why do I want them here?
Interesting spin on law enforcement. So I have decided I wanted to do something for my community. Now, this is me, not just anybody. I'm Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and I went to the city police, I went to the county police, I went to the state police, and I went to the fire department, and I said, I'm willing to offer a free workshop or talk on being prepared for a grid down situation. And guess what? Not one single person called me back to even ask me a question on why I would want to do that or anything like that. They have no interest in supporting the community anymore in terms of these kinds of situations. That's a fact.
Well, Rick, I can put an exclamation on it. When did you do that? Was it years ago or recently?
Last week. I spent a whole day going to each person, knocking on the door. The National Guard had maybe 60 cars parked out in front. The flag was not flying. It was inside, draped over a chair, across barricaded doors, and we pushed the buzzer, and nobody answered, ever. National Guard.
Yeah, okay. Well, let me put the exclamation point on it. 2011, we had an expo, and I personally talked with representatives of the National Guard, the Red Cross, and the Civil Air Patrol. And I invited them to come to the expo and teach people what they're all about so people would understand. And they all said yes, they were delighted to be coming. They thought this was the coolest thing. And then all of a sudden, on the same day, they all pulled the plug just before the expo. And the message came from Washington, D.C. They were told to stand down. Do not come to the expo. Do not come to the expo. Do not teach people about preparedness. Do not help your village. They were told to stand down, and they all did. What a bunch of pansies. So, do I contribute to the Red Cross? Absolutely not. Do I support the National Guard? Absolutely not. Do I support the Civil Air Patrol? Absolutely not. It's unbelievable. Our country is crumbling right in front of our eyes. The Civil Air Patrol, those were private pilots who during World War II patrolled up and down the coast looking for enemies of the United States who would be intent on doing damage to the United States of America. Those were civilian pilots flying their own airplanes to protect us. And now they're taking directions from Washington to not let us protect ourselves. And they stood down. What a bunch of pansies. Seriously, the commander of the Civil Air Patrol in our area is a pansy. He didn't say, have you lost your mind, Washington, D.C.? These guys are trying to teach people how to protect themselves, how to prepare for everything, how to keep our country afloat. No, they all buckled under a phone call from some jerk in Washington, D.C., telling him, no, you can't do it. It's an outrage.
I've got another one I can talk about if you're interested.
I hope you don't hit any more of my buttons.
What's that? I'm telling you, I am it's like I feel like there are people all over my computer at any given moment, and things are, I'm becoming a paranoid, and I don't want to be like that.
Wait a minute. Are you paranoid, or do you have, are there reasons? It sounds like there are reasons, right?
Well, it's that, okay, but you can never really prove anything, so it's my imagination. And the thing is, I am smarter than anybody I know, truly. I don't make a big deal about it, but I know that I don't know, and yet I'm looked at in disrespect and disbelief when I would even question such tactics as gang stalking. You know, gang stalking protocols are real creepy. This is a new technique that was developed out of Washington State to take drug dealers off the streets of New York City. Rather than arrest them and put them in jail, they have a new technique on how to make them so paranoid that nobody wants to have anything to do with them. And it worked. It came out of Tavistock. I'm publishing it. Right now I'm looking at Microsoft News on the wife of White House communications chief goes on anti-vaccine tirade. Choice of words. I am questioning the way our news reporting selects the way they're going to do a headline statement. And we've had a measles outbreak in Oregon and Washington State. I think there's like 11 cases. And so they're wanting everybody in the state of Oregon and Washington to get a measles. Now, would you go at I'm 75. Would you go at 75 years old, go for a measles vaccination?
Of course not.
Why?
Because I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody to put anything.
About supposing medicine is not broken. Why would you not get one? What do you think is the chances of getting measles?
Right now, pretty slim.
What do you mean slim? Are we talking 1%, 1/10 of 1%, 1,000th of 1%?
Well, I don't know. You just mentioned 11 in the state of Oregon.
How many people are in the state of Washington, and there are 11 cases? That's a good way to put your percentage.
Right.
Well, then there it is. That's a mathematical way of saying horse shit. And that's by my standards. And when you realize that, number two, you do feel medicine is broken, and that there is no confidence in any of it anymore. Allopathic medicine is to treat the symptom, not the cause. That's chemistry, better living with DuPont. And I'm going to tell you that our whole concept of everything now is being brought into question, and with detail. Like, I want to know why, and I notice that there's nobody that can talk to me about it. And it isn't that I'm hostile, because I want to know. I really do. I really do. And nobody can tell me.
Well,
now, measles, I've had measles. Does that mean I'm going to get them again?
Hold that thought. We're going into a break. We'll be right back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Rick, you asked me if I would take a measles vaccine. The answer is absolutely not. And if you asked me if I would take a measles vaccine, and the answer is absolutely not.
Oh, yeah.
Out of 1 million people, 19 statistically will get measles. 19 out of 1 million.
Yeah, I know. So it's not a measles outbreak. It's something else going on.
Right. And of 1,000 people who get measles, 1 will die. So 1 out of 1,000 dies, and 19 out of 1 million get it. But where is it prevalent? Well, that would be in Europe, Asia, the Pacific, and Africa. That's where it's the most common.
So why are they demanding that people take a measles shot in Oregon and Washington? And why would Microsoft News, MSN, call the wife of White House communications chief as a tirade? I'm calling out Microsoft News as BS. And by the way, on Bing, that's the #1 story.
Okay, so U.S. News and World Report.
They're assaulting us. I'm insulted. I am embarrassed for them, and I'm calling out alternative news of Microsoft, Fox, CNN. They're all slipshod. And when I say slipshod, I watch the way they use their words. Washington Post, New York Times are a little more careful.
Okay.
I remember a time when I watched CBS because of Walter Cronkite, and it changed to Dan Rather. And then I started to leap over to CNN to get a different balance on things. And CNN is an embarrassment in news reporting today. That's my humble opinion.
Rick, U.S. News and World Report yesterday says measles cases topped 100. That was yesterday. Well, there's over 300 million people in the United States, and 100 of them get measles. I'll bet you that more people are looking down at their cell phones and almost castrate themselves by walking into fire hydrants on city streets than get measles in the United States.
I'm embarrassed on this article as the lead article of the day, and I'm calling it CNN number fake, number hysteria. There it is. The entire baby boom population today has had the measles as kids. I had measles.
Yeah. We all did.
I don't need a measles shot at 75 years old. What do you think that would do to my health?
Well, it would probably prevent us from being on the air next Thursday.
And what do you think? It'd probably make me ill, yeah. Because the old immunization is the way they did it in the 40s when I went to the Philippines to get black plague and yellow fever. They give you a dose of it, and it knocks you down on your back and allows your body to develop an immune system toward it. That's why public schools as grade school is a good thing, because you get exposed to everything there. And you, at some point, become immune, building up your own immune system. But that's not the direction they want to do things today. And in terms of getting a flu shot, the flu is impossible to get an immune shot that will prevent you from getting flu, because flu changes so quickly from H1N1 virus to a mutated version of it. It is impossible to get an immunization for flu. The way you build up your immunity is by getting several different flus, and you then have a series of RK killer cells that go in and go after look-alike structures in physical chemistry. And that mostly comes from your mother's breast. I'm telling you, this whole concept of free flu shots, why would they give them out free in the first place at Walgreens?
Oh, I think the answer is to limit population.
Well, then that's one, and they're criticizing her for saying so.
About 45 years ago, I came home from the university, and I said, so, Mom, Dad, what's new? Oh, we got the flu shot, and we almost died. We thought we were going to die. My parents were conned into getting flu shots. Why? Well, everybody was getting them. Everybody was getting the flu shot. And my parents almost died from getting the flu shot. I had a very dear friend right here in Missouri. His name was Paul. And Paul had cancer, but he was doing okay. And, he was surviving with it. And I called him up and I said, how's it going, Paul? I said, well, I got a doctor's appointment tomorrow. I said, Paul, look, promise me, please promise me that you won't get the flu shot, because your doctor is going to say, Paul, you need to get the flu shot, and it'll kill you. Don't get the flu shot. Promise me. Okay, Vincent, I promise. I called him back after he had his doctor's appointment. I said, hey, Paul, how's it going? So how was your appointment? He said, well, Vincent, you're going to be mad at me. I said, why, Paul? Now, Paul was in his 80s. He's a wonderful man, dear friend. He said, well, my doctor said I need to get the flu shot, and so he said it, so I got it. He was dead in 30 days. Those are my experiences with flu shots. I haven't had one.
The immunization to flu is a myth. Doesn't work because the viruses change so frequently. But there are foods you can eat that contain beta-glucans. Beta-glucans are sugars that look like invading bacteria, small bacteria or large virus. They're very, have an unusual structure to them in the way of sugar. And what happens next is if you use transfer factor with a pharmaceutical mushroom that has beta-glucans in it, that works better than anything. It puts an enzyme up on the cell looking for geometrical lookalikes and similarities, and basically is called an immune enhancer. Immune system enhancer, not of giving you a dose for the fear of getting it. That's what immunization is about. They give you a dosage, a small dosage of the disease you are afraid you might get. Now you tell me what's wrong with that concept. There it is.
Well, I know that for people who had allergies back in the 1960s, they were given immunization shots. And what the doctor would do is he would have these vials of mold, chocolate, mustard, dust, and they would prick your skin and put a little bit of each one of those substances under the skin. And they would use a pen and they would say, this is number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to 20. And they would have a chart that would say number 1 is mold, number 2 is chocolate, number 3 is mustard. And then they would look to see which bumps on your skin were raised.
That's called an allergy test. That is not to prevent your allergy.
No.
Allergy is your body's over-response to something, and it produces histamines. And they had antihistamine pills that you would take, that kind of thing, and a simple reprogramming the body using hypnosis took care of it for SEAL Team number 1. Now, that's how you get rid of allergies. Allergies is your body's over-responding to something. And the problem is, you don't want to put that mold on your skin. That's the way a Navy SEAL protocol was to determine whether or not something was toxic. You're in the woods. You don't know whether you can eat it or not. What you do is take the soft part of your arm and put a scratch on it, and then put the item next to the scratch. If it forms up into a fester within 10 minutes, you're toxic. And that's how you have a built-in system of knowing whether or not you can eat something when you don't have an identification of what kind of mushroom it is or what kind of other kind of root system it might be. That's how you do it. It's a simple thing. And histamines can be reprogrammed. The histamine release is just like snake bite. If you got bit by a snake, what you're trying to do is slow the circulation of the toxin being spread throughout your system. And the way you do that is you either put a tourniquet on it or you cool it. And you try to slow circulation so your body is able to metabolize and manage the toxin without it being overwhelmed. And a simple allergy is the same exact thing. I got so bad, I was hospitalized and in an oxygen tent until I decided I had to take things in my own hands as a child. I, wore all kinds of protective gearing when I would go out and mow the lawn, and that was nonsense. And it was then I discovered it's all about histamines, and that's your body's response to overreacting to toxins. And everything at some level is a toxin. And so what you want to do is cope. That's a good word. And where the pain is below a certain threshold so it doesn't interfere with thinking processes, that kind of thing. If you didn't have pain, you wouldn't be alive. So that's that. So pain has its purpose in the measurement of healing and your relationship to self. And what you're trying to do is put it in a manner so you cope and can get along and have an awareness system that is red flagging you when there may be toxins in the air. Now, here's the deal. All of this is manageable with your mind's eye. Doesn't need medicine. And medicine, allotropic medicines, the ones we normally associate with doctors and mental health and all the rest of it, is going after fixing the symptom, not the root cause. And that's the other part of what's wrong with medicine. The whole concept of it is different. That's why Chinese medicine, you pay your doctor when you're well. You don't pay him when you're sick. Different way of looking at things.
And what I was saying about the allergy test is that those under the skin exposures would let the doctor be able to figure out what you were allergic to. Then what they would do next, Rick, is they would give you very, very mild doses of that dust, of that chocolate.
Yeah, giving you the toxin. Why would you do that?
Well, that's what I'm saying is that's what they did.
I know, that's what they do, not what they did. That's what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And why would you do that? And the measles is Exhibit A. It's not an outbreak. And they're criticizing this woman as I guess I could be called a tirade. No, it's logic, and I challenge any medical doctor on that issue. I'll take them to the woodshed.
I just received some emails about farmers, the plight of farmers today. And headline says U.S. faces a catastrophic food supply crisis in America as farmers struggle. And I'm here to tell you that farmers are struggling, at least this farmer is. And it's a result of many things. It's a result of the absence of birds and bees and squirrels and chipmunks. It's an absence of dung beetles that eat the cow poop. It is the glyphosate that comes down in the rain. It is the lack of sun. It's the chemical spraying of our skies. It is the weather that's absolutely nuts. It's 13 degrees one day, and then a few days later it's in the 60s. The ground doesn't know what to do. It's heaving. We have mud that we can't drive through on the fields. It's difficult to feed the cows hay because we get stuck in the fields. We're still doing it, but it's really a chore. And then we have the cows that are let's say they're not up to par and they're not feeling well. And well, then the weather, it rains on them, then it freezes on them, and then they slip and hurt their legs. It's what's happening to farmers is absolutely awful. And it is threatening our food supply. Just look at the insects. Just look at where did they go? Where are the flies? Where are the flies? We used to have flies all the time because we have cows. We don't have flies very much anymore. So the food chain has been disrupted. The rain we can't depend on the rain. We can't depend on anything other than the fact that we can't depend on anything. That's where we are. So I think when you look at the food supply, I just want to tell you, it's being threatened right now and heavily. Farmers are going under. Farmers cannot operate their farms. They can't afford John Deere equipment. It costs too much. It's skewed. Farmers are really in serious trouble. Rick, have you heard of anything otherwise? Have you heard anywhere that farmers are doing well? Because I don't think it's possible.
You know, if you were to believe the media, Russia, but you know, with Anastasia and small communities of farms that are setting up an infrastructure like the kinds we would like to see in America. Europe is in war. These concepts of open borders, in medicine, I would say open borders in medicine, that's a good concept. But really, the whole thing is political anymore and around religious beliefs. And I can't tell you what the right thing to do is, because it's different for each of us. Each of us has been raised a certain way, and the truth of what's important is not out there. It's inside you.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us, class. If you'd like to go to his website, richardallenmiller.com, Richard, A-L-A-N, Miller.com. Rick, light pollution, is disrupting the natural cycles. And I believe it's because the GDP, the generally dumb public, needs 24 access to everything, like 24-hour Walmart. 7-Eleven is now a 24/7 operation. People need whatever it is, or people believe they need whatever it is they want 24 hours a day. So we light up the highways, the byways, the city streets, the buildings, and it's disrupting the natural cycles. Plants and animals don't know when to rest. They don't know when to rest. So the question I have for you is, how does it end? Does it end with a big bang, like a World War III bang? Does it end with a slow collapse, disease, hunger, poisoning? What are your thoughts?
Well, the author I read said it ends with a whimper. You know, it is so encroaching from the sunlight that we're getting now that's killing all the insects. That's what the farmers are noticing now, is that the flies on the cow pies are less. The ants are less. And that there are massive quantities of insects dying out as a
Let me give you an example then.
I'm sorry?
Let me give you an example. So we've got cows walking around in the fields and they poop and they leave these cow pies. Well, years ago, these cow pies would be attacked by dung beetles. They would just appear. And there'd be hundreds, if not thousands of beetles just appearing in the cow poop, and they would cause it to separate and disintegrate, okay? Naturally. Now cow pies seem to almost live forever. They now become like coprolite. Coprolite is dinosaur poop that's become fossilized. And so what we have to do, what I've done, is I take a chain harrow. It's a 10-foot by 10-foot. It's kind of like chain link fencing, but the openings are maybe 6 inches square versus 2 inches square, and it's real heavy. It weighs about 500 or more pounds. And I pull it with a tractor, and it just goes across the field. And when it runs into these cow pies, it just breaks them up. So I spread them around, because what used to happen naturally isn't happening so well anymore. So you think we're going to go down in a whimper?
Probably won't even notice it, because we're being distracted by so many false flags.
Yeah, like Kim Kardashian and the Bruce Jenner. Can't figure out whether he's a male or female or both. Yeah, that kind of stuff that's making the news.
Or our school system now requiring the children being taught 15 different kinds of genders.
Pick one. It's like Rodney's fun
Well,
screen.
you can laugh
Pick
at
me,
it.
pick me.
What would be nice is to go in to the education board and laugh them out of their office.
Well, I tried to fire them. I put an ad in the paper. I literally put an ad in our county paper, and it said, fire the entire school board, one director at a time. Consider voting for Vincent Finelli, the only candidate who won't make your child urinate in a cup. That's what I did.
That's a good one. How many votes did you get? Or did they even see it? Because I don't even bother with a newspaper anymore.
Well, they did. They did, and they saw it. As a matter of fact, people in Jefferson City, the state capital, even knew that I did that, and they knew who I am. Even before I was involved in radio, they knew who I was because I would do things like that. But I wanted to fire the entire school board because they're a bunch of morons, and they are destroying the opportunities that our children would have had they been educated. But they're not educated.
How about law enforcement and not wanting someone like me, a retired Navy SEAL, talking about how to prep yourself for water?
Well, it's not only you, Rick. It's me, too. I volunteered to help our police department.
Let's put on another seminar. That gives me an excuse to come back and visit in Missouri. It gives me a chance to have darshan with all the people that want to know each other like that.
All right. Let's ask
something like that.
Let's ask this question of the class. If we did that, would you come if you couldn't bring your cell phone? Class, would you come to a USA Prepares Get Prepared Expo if you couldn't bring your cell phone? Yes or no? Instructor at USA Prepares. Tell me. Rick, thanks so much.